Saturday evening, we had a call for service of a death investigation. Officers responded to 426 South River Street and discovered a deceased female victim of an apparent homicide. That victim is Christine Scacia Lubeck, age 43, of 426 South River Street. We have very few homicides in Janesville, and accordingly we can assign significant resources when they do occur. Over the following 2 days of this homicide, we assigned 25 officers to the investigation. The suspects in this matter were taken into custody within 2.5 hours of our initial call, and they were taken into custody in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. The suspects are Julian D. Colosso, age 21. He recently moved to Janesville. He is from Houston, Texas, currently, and for some time has had no fixed address in Janesville. The second suspect is Nicole R. Kazar, age 23, of Beloit, Wisconsin. Preliminary information indicates the victim knew the suspect, victim knew the suspect, Colosso, and was in her home with her permission. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends of Christine Scacia Lubeck. And with that, I will turn this over to Lieutenant Terry Sheridan. He is the commander of our Detective Bureau, and he can share further details. Lieutenant.
Okay, thanks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the timeline of events when we were notified and kind of lay out our investigation in general, what our department did and where we're at with it today. I'll talk about the suspects that we have in custody a little bit, pretty much go over the information that is in the handouts that many of you already have. So as the chief mentioned, we received the initial call on December 9th at about 4:44 p.m. We got a malfunction up here. Hold on. To the 911 center. So the 911 center received a call of a possible DOA at 426 South River. Patrol responded to the scene. We determined that the initial caller was the mother of the deceased victim, who had went over to the house and found her daughter deceased in the home. Officers arrived at 4:46 p.m., located the deceased victim, secured the scene, and began the preliminary investigation into the cause of death. At 4:53 p.m. on the 9th, the Detective Bureau and evidence personnel were notified, and they responded and arrived on scene at approximately 5:24 p.m. We began the investigation in conjunction with patrol officers that were already on scene, and we determined the identity of the deceased. And we also discovered that her vehicle was missing from the garage. The vehicle was a 2015 Chevy Trax. We reached out to OnStar, and with their cooperation, we were able to quickly locate the victim's vehicle in Missouri, Cape Girardeau, Missouri. The information was given out to Cape Girardeau law enforcement, and at approximately 7:10 p.m., law enforcement in Cape Girardeau located the vehicle, stopped in a gas station in their city. They approached the vehicle and found it was occupied by our two suspects, who were taken into custody shortly after the initial contact. And talking when they talked to the suspects and then looking at the vehicle, they found evidence of the crime here in Janesville that we believe is linked. Pretty significant evidence. and they towed the vehicle, the property, and then transported the suspects to their holding facility for us. At 8:15 p.m., we executed a search warrant here in Janesville at the home at 426 South River Street, again to try to establish what exactly happened and to collect evidence from the scene, which we did do. Our detectives here at Janesville PD were basically in constant contact with Cape Girardeau officials, and with their help, they interviewed the female suspect who was taken into custody, who was cooperative and provided information regarding this incident here in Janesville. And we worked throughout late into the night, early morning hours of the 9th. We came back early on the 10th, December 10th, to continue the investigation. Two of our detectives were sent to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, to make contact, to interview the suspect there, the male suspect, and to collect evidence and speak with the law enforcement officials there. We also entered 2 temporary felony warrants for both the suspects that were taken into custody in Missouri at the time, so that they could be held. Our detectives, Janesville detectives, interviewed the male suspect, who was, he did talk, however he wasn't necessarily cooperative with our detective, and basically denied any knowledge of the crime or any knowledge of the victim. Also on the 10th, autopsy was conducted on the victim to determine the cause of death. Earlier this morning, the Rock County Medical Examiner's Office put out a press release advising that the victim's death was a result of homicidal sharp force injuries, meaning basically translated into stab wounds. This is a photo of the victim in this incident. I was in here earlier. I know many of you want actual digital copies, so if you want digital copies of anything, I got up here photos or the PowerPoint. Just give me your card and I'll email it after the press conference. This is her photo provided by the family. These are the suspects that were taken into custody in Missouri, and a little bit of history about them. Julian D. Colosso, he's a 21-year-old male, we feel is the primary suspect in the homicide here in Janesville. Just looking at his criminal history, he's a convicted felon. He has a lengthy criminal history, primarily in Texas and all around in Texas. Consists of a variety of arrests such as drugs, burglary, theft, theft from motor vehicles, or theft of motor vehicles, and assaults. He has no fixed address here in Wisconsin, and he is known to be in the Janesville area since, I'm just looking here, actually I believe that would have been earlier than August 31st. Let me double check. I think that's a typo on my part. August 5th, or I'm sorry. No, that is correct. I'm sorry, that is correct. We first became aware he was in the city here on August 31st. The contacts that we've had with Mr. Colosso since he's been here are outlined here. The first contact we had with him was on October 4th. He was arrested for an underage drinking violation, an ordinance violation here in the city. On October 16th, he was a suspect in a possible drug violation. No arrests were made on that incident. Again, on November 17th, we had contact with him. He was arrested for operating a motor vehicle without owner's consent and possession of drug paraphernalia. And then on December 6th, he was arrested for retail theft. So those are the contacts we've had with him prior to the incident this weekend. The The second suspect that was taken into custody by Missouri law enforcement is Nicole Kazar. She's 23 years old. Her last known address is in Beloit, Wisconsin, although she advises now that she's homeless. A review of her criminal history shows that she's currently on probation. She has a criminal history consisting of credit card fraud, drug and paraphernalia violations, and battery. Janesville PD has only had 2 contacts with Ms. Kazar, one on 11/23 of 2016 where she was mentioned in a theft from a motor vehicle, and then again on September 6th she was arrested by Janesville officers on a warrant through Beloit PD for drug paraphernalia, and then she also had drug paraphernalia on her, so she received a second arrest through Janesville for paraphernalia. We're still actively investigating the incident. As the chief mentioned, we do believe that the suspect, male suspect in this case, was at the victim's house with her permission, and he was known to the victim. We're following up on information and still trying to establish relationships or how everybody knew each other. And we're working today. What we're doing, we recovered the vehicle from Missouri. It was brought back to Wisconsin from Missouri from our detectives. We'll be doing some search warrants, looking for evidence in the vehicle, and we're working together with the district attorney's office to determine appropriate charges and extradition to get these 2 suspects brought back to Janesville here to officially charge them here and start the court process of that. So for now I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Moore here, and then we'll answer questions here at the end.
We know that a very small percentage of people are responsible for the majority of the crime that occurs across America, occurs across our state, in our communities. So progressive policing initiatives include identifying hot spots, hot groups, and hot people. We tend to send our police resources to those locations where we know that there may be crime. We assign our police resources to known criminal groups, gangs if you will, and we assign our police resources to those people in the community that we think may bring harm to the community. Members of the high-risk offender abatement team works with these individuals that we've identified. We meet with them, we track their activities, we help them if we can, we arrest them, and we coordinate with the district attorney's office the prosecution of these individuals. Julian Colosso was one of these individuals. We identified him in October. We had concerns about him, particularly with his gang affiliation out of Texas. We shared with our officers his history, his pictures, his tattoos, and monitored his activity in the community. While we had concerns about Colosso being in the community, there was no cause to take Colosso into custody prior to this homicide. We've assigned police resources to the family to help them through these tragic times. And we assigned officers to the neighborhood to share with them the progress of this investigation so they know the details and know that we are investigating it and the nature of the investigation, hopefully to give some comfort to the neighborhood. So with that, we'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Chief, you mentioned that, excuse me, the Cape Girardeau Police found evidence in the vehicle relating to the crime. Can you be more specific as to what that evidence is?
Lieutenant Sheridan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that we found blood evidence that we believe is Christine's blood. However, further scientific testing is needed for that, which we will have done. But we're confident. We're quite confident anyway. Prior to this testing, that it is Christine's. We also found some shoes that was owned by the suspect that we believe there were some shoe prints at the scene that we believe match. So there's some forensic testing, additional forensic testing that's going to need to be done to confirm some of that. But and then additionally, we believe there's more evidence in the vehicle. However, we'll know more about that after we search it later today.
Do you have a weapon that was used in the crime?
We do not have a weapon recovered, no.
So you said that you mentioned that he was in the home previously with her knowledge. Do you think that it was premeditated?
We're still working on trying to figure that out. We do believe that he was in the home at her invite.
How did she know?
We're working to establish that.
Was there any indication of a struggle?
There was some we were able to see that it appeared that this began in the bathroom of the residence and then proceeded through a hallway to a bedroom. So there was some indication of a struggle or fight, if you will.
How did her blood get in the car? That's what you said, right? You believe her blood was in the car?
On the suspect's shoes, yeah.
Oh, I see. Transferred from the shoes.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't.
once assuming it's her blood, the DNA comes back and shows it's her blood, you would have had to have been in that house to have that blood on you, and then, subsequently arrested in a different state with that on.
Why do you believe she invited him in?
We're still working to figure that out.
The mom lives right next door. What triggered her to check on her daughter? Did she hear some screaming or anything like that?
Nobody heard anything in the neighborhood. Specifically, the mother did not hear anything. She has a sibling that was concerned about her, hadn't heard about her for a while, and had made a call to the mom asking her to go check on her.
Hadn't heard from a while, so was she deceased prior to the night?
The last time that the sister heard from her was via a text message around 7 p.m. on Friday night. And as you can see from the timeline, we got the call the next day, or at 4:44 p.m. I think it was. So she had been there for some time.
Approximately how many stab wounds were on the body?
There were multiple stab wounds. The information that I got from the autopsy yesterday were in excess of 30 stab wounds.
So it would have happened sometime between Friday evening and Saturday evening. Do you know in that timeline whereabout?
We're working on that. I don't have the exact time for you at the moment.
And was she there at the time, Kazar? Do you know if she was at the residence at the time?
So as I mentioned before, she was, Nicole Kazar was interviewed by Missouri law enforcement, and she is denying being there at the time of the murder. She says she was picked up after the fact.
Is there any evidence to believe the contrary?
No.
So there's no reason to believe that this was any sort of landlord-tenant thing. He wasn't living there,
She lived there alone. He was not living there, and I believe it's her. I don't think she's renting, so yeah, no, I mean.
Do you have any idea how long the two had known each other? Had he been to her house before?
I don't know. That's something that we're looking into.
Did you find out about the suspects before the car was found, or is that when you were first alerted to who they were?
That was when we first discovered who they were. So obviously now you can see that we had a pretty good idea who the suspects were early on. We decided that we did not want to release that simply because it was early in the investigation, and we did not want to jeopardize that, who the identities were, before we could get a chance to interview them and hopefully recover some of the evidence. Secondly, and actually more importantly, in my opinion, is we felt like there were no other suspects associated with this, and therefore there was no immediate safety threat to the community, which is what we tried to relay in the initial press releases. And we were pretty confident that we had the right people in custody.
How many homicides have we seen in Janesville this year?
Other than this would be our second one.
Was property removed from the house?
We believe there was property stolen from the house, which may also be a motive for this. And we're looking into that possibility. Evidence was collected from the house for some items that we believe could have been taken. So.
You have located items with the suspect that had been from the house, though, at this point?
No, we have not. But again, we haven't searched the vehicle, the victim's vehicle, the vehicle that the two suspects were in. So we're hopeful that some of that may be found in the vehicle, but we'll know hopefully later today. We'll be serving a search warrant on that vehicle and searching for evidence.
Can you say what kind of knife was used?
I don't know. The pathologist also did not give us their opinion about what exact kind of knife was used.
This term homicidal sharp force injuries, in plain English, is that a stab wound? Are you certain it was a knife?
Yeah, we're certain it's a single-edged knife. And that comes from the pathologist. He was able to tell us it's a single-edged knife.
You familiar with any did he have any other acquaintances in the area that you're aware of?
The suspect?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been interviewing, we've been in contact with anybody who we think we know, may know, not just him, but any of the people involved here. We've been working on that, interviewing associates of both suspects and the victims, trying to get as much information as we can. We're still looking for information. This case is not closed, so like usual, I would ask the public to contact us if they have any information regarding this incident or the people involved in this incident. No bit of information is too small, so if anybody has any information, we would ask that they give us a call.
Have you had any calls so far?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Do you know when they would have taken off to go to Missouri? Like how long they were there once you got in contact with them?
You know, I mean, that kind of goes along with the whole timeline of, you know, when this occurred, and I just don't have that. What I can tell you is I believe, we have not confirmed this yet, but I believe they would have left the victim's house prior to it snowing that night. So if you recall, on Friday night it snowed. We had a dusting of snow. And from all indicators at the scene, they would have left sometime after 7 and prior to it snowing that night. So where they went from there, their exact route, or, you know, I don't know. So.
Are they cooperating at all? Do you have any knowledge of what would have started this? Because 30 stab wounds is excessive, it sounds like. They're kind of passionate.
I agree. And the answer is the male suspect is not cooperating, in that he denies everything, offers no explanation for the blood on his shoes and clothes. So I would say he is uncooperative. The female suspect has been cooperative and has been answering questions.
You're still wearing clothing that had blood on it?
It was my understanding from the Missouri law enforcement that he still had the shoes on that had blood on it, but he had changed the rest of his clothes.
Was there any indication by the examiner, medical examiner, that, you know, evidence of any other physical wounds to her, you know, blunt force trauma, neck wounds, anything like that?
The information that I had was, there was it was primarily stab wounds, and a significant amount, as you pointed out. So.
You mentioned that you had some contact with the male suspect through your special unit. So that, I'm trying to find out how big of a part OnStar played in this in terms of making an arrest. I know you had other leads as well, but how big of a role did OnStar play in this?
They played a significant role in the capture of these two suspects. I mean, they were able to point out that, I mean, we, quite honestly, I mean, we had no idea that, you know, initially, like most crime scenes, I mean, we don't know who did it, where they are, and I mean, as you see on the timeline, and as the chief mentioned, it was roughly within 2.5 hours from the time we got the call to the time these two people were in suspect in a whole different state, you know. So OnStar played a significant role in helping us.
Is Colosso alleged to be the sole attacker in the incident, or is there reason to believe that they both might have been involved?
At this time, we believe he acted alone, although we're not ruling out the possibility that Kazar also was with him. But with the information we have right now, it appears that he probably acted alone.
Okay, folks, it looks like the questions are starting to reduce here a bit. I can tell you that we still have much work to do. We have search warrants that have not been executed. We have vehicles that have not been searched. There certainly is digital evidence that we need to review. And I think some of that evidence, although it's going to take us time to get to, will provide more information as to why this crime occurred. Thank you, everybody.